I just did the most me thing ever. Hello, folks. Hello, folks. God damn it. Hello, folks. It's Hyena64, and you're watching High Strategy. It's 4:20 in the PM, over by 5 minutes, because I just spent the last 5 minutes talking to no one because my mic was off. Oh my gosh. Well, I'll fix it in post. So folks, I want to address the thing I said at the beginning of the video. Your Majesty, Omukama Iguru the First of the King of Banyoro, Kitara, I do seriously want to offer you some sincere apologies if you are in any way offended by what I am doing in this video, because I can fully and completely imagine that you would find this video potentially offensive, as I am playing as your ancestors. Folks, I am literally playing as the ancestors of a current king in Africa, and perhaps this is a fortunate day for me to realize that. Because today, I want to step back for a moment, because of the game I'm playing, because of the kingdom I'm playing, because I'm what I'm doing, to address the history of, that I am altering and playing out. Because what I'm doing to this poor, His Majesty's family, I should not call him poor, I'm sure he is quite wealthy, and has a very glorious and prestigious house, I am basically turning his family's history into Game of Thrones right now for all of you. And because there is a way in which I hope that His Majesty and others who would want to respect His Majesty, rightfully so, might object to. But this is a historical game for a reason, and one of the reasons I like it is a historical game. I'm currently playing as this is real history I'm playing out. This isn't a simulation like Civilization 6. If you really understand Europa Universalis 4, you realize it's one of the more subversive games, the most, if you will, subversive 4X game, in my opinion, of any 4X game you ever play. And the reason it is because the people over at Paradox who make it, who have the good fortune of living in Sweden, a country that not a lot of people around the world have complaints about, historically speaking. Maybe some people in Africa who might know quite a bit of the history may have some opinions about the Swedes engaging in the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. Because the Swedes certainly did, and they had a colony in the Americas very briefly, and did most of the things other European powers, Western, German and Roman European powers, Germanic and Roman, and Celtic, Roman, Iberian, etc. powers of this area all had in common, which is colonialism. They did participate, but they are one of the least belligerent of the nations. They are the Canada, what we refer to in the modern day as like the Canada of. They are the Canada of, if you will, colonialism. Because they had a little colony, it got conquered immediately, and they said, well, that's a waste of money. They spend most of their time fighting a bunch of wars against the Russians and other regional powers, and that was what they spent most of this time doing, rather than going out into the Americas and genociding people so much. But they did participate in and benefit from it in a kind of in a more indirect ways. And so because they live here, they actually kind of portray the history accurately. And the fan base has pushed them to make it more accurate quite a bit. If not for political reasons, though I'm sure many do it for political reasons, for the reason that doing so genuinely makes the game more interesting, because everybody who plays this game loves alternate history. It is an alternate history game. So you can see that we see many other dynasties, some of which are actually, and I'm going to show you one. I think de Bourgogne is actually still around as well. I'm sure a lot of these families again are actually still around, like Antelliminelli. I'm sure this is very heavily researched, frankly, with this game, because they did that. They went and found out as close as possible, exactly how the Holy Roman Empire was divided up to simulate it accurately in the game. Because they love European history, but they portray it accurately. Unlike people, say, in England who might like European history, but always kind of see England as an exception or a rule, because they're not part of the continent, or whatever. But, you have here the Valois dynasty, which is a very important historical dynasty that you could definitely I'm almost certain, I'm not going to say definitely, but I am practically certain you could find a descendant of the Valois dynasty alive today who would technically be the current heir were the Valois not dethroned. Somebody who could actually claim the title as King of France under the old rules of feudalism that we don't follow anymore and haven't since 1789, since Napoleon conquered everything, so like 1812 or whatever. Like, well, not even 1812, because it still kind of existed, but it was the beginning of the transition. Old Romanovs. So, if your majesty is offended, I apologize. If it is any comfort, you are not alone. Nor is there, I think, any kind of necessarily discrimination intentionally going on in the game, though I'm sure there is discrimination in the fact that they didn't even get around to adding you and your kingdom until this year, which perhaps is the greater crime than me playing as you, your majesty. Because in a way, me doing this is a sort of honoring your family, because you still exist, and you exist, as I'm sure you're aware, because of your historical title to the land. And this is your family, your history, though not really. No, actually not at all. It's not your family and your history, but this is a tale of how if your family history had been substantially different, because basically I'd be everyone in your family tree, and I'm sure you and I are very much not alike, but and unless you're unless you are like, I mean, who knows? You never know. Maybe I'll make a friend. Anyway, life aside, I doubt this channel will ever get popular enough that a literal African king will actually bother to care to send me a cease and desist of some sort. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. And if it ever happens, I will just cease and desist, because I would be respectful. Because I'm not an asshole. That's not what I'm trying to be. What I am trying to do is stop Africa from being decolonized by these jerk Europeans. To it, I recently, my partner or someone in my house recently got a copy of a collection of several collections of Malcolm X works, and I was thumbing through it, and Malcolm X mentioned in a speak to, I think, the Michigan Militant Workers Association, it was for some worker left-wing unionist paper in Chicago that was very pro-civil rights, but majority white. Malcolm X was speaking to them, and in the middle of it, somehow he got on, I forget how, but he got on the topic of, if you white people really care enough to, help us, stop telling us to be nonviolent and show us what you did. Show us what would have helped. Show us how to fight the other white people like you. And I take things Malcolm X and other revolutionary people like that very seriously. Because in that I hear the cries of many, not just the cries of Malcolm X. So, in service of that, since I am playing a historical game, I intend to try to treat the subject material well, because I am an amateur historian, And while the education I give you might be high school level and hardly, you know, a formal education in West Point military tactics, I'm sure there are those of you who could better explain what I am doing. And I gotta tell you, I want to see somebody who actually is black, not just me who's trying to be kind of an ally here, but who actually literally is of African descent, perhaps even somebody in Africa or in the Caribbean who has, or in America, but anywhere in the African diaspora or in Africa, who could play this game and give you the kind of commentary I'm trying to give you, that is a history in addition to an alternate history, because I think that's a genuinely good educational tool. But here I am. You got what you got, and I got what I got. And if anyone out there does that, please, I would be thrilled. I'll promote you as much as my little reach goes if you do that, because I'm serious about these things. But I am playing out the logic, if you will, of colonialism in this game. The game is very designed around colonialism. There were a lot of accusations of bias in the game in previous versions because there have been just arbitrary advantages given to Western European powers with no explanation. But a lot of it is because there have been some recent works that have come out that add a little bit more thought to why Europe conquered the world in this time period. And that's why we have this institutions thing that we're showing you, where they kind of hand wave and go, okay, the arbitrary mechanic is that if you get, like, a bunch of, if you really develop a province, and I guess technology would advance if you were investing a lot in the infrastructure of your economy, and not only would you be wealthier, but you would also be more technologically advanced, and we're kind of use institutions as, like, a very high-level abstraction of that process, because that process isn't something we can intelligently talk about, right? Just as this game is a game of numbers that an actual monarch or an actual ruler would never have had access to. An actual monarch wouldn't know really what taxes were going to look like the next year. It would be much more chaotic than what I'm experiencing, because the game's an abstraction inherently. It's a game. Like, we must always, at some point, we must stop going deep into simulation and back out and say, that's as much of the story as we can tell right now. Here's an arbitrary mechanic that we use as a placeholder for an actual history. But if you will, you could kind of see Europa Universalis as a really good tool for discussing history, educating history, and modeling history. Not in a scientific way, but in kind of a casual, more playful way that I'm sure could inspire somebody who is way more academically minded than me to actually develop a historical simulatory model based on this in order to predict history. Because that would be just... if that happened, it would be a revolution in social science. And if you will, games are a way to think about, are a form of extraction that is very good for building kind of an instinctual sense about how things are supposed to go. Like, having played a lot of these games, I can say, well, this country is kind of powerful right now and has a lot of stuff, and research that a little bit and come to the conclusion, well, this country is probably going to do this, and this country has a lot of incentive to do that, just kind of as a natural feel, because I've been playing this game a lot. It's, and games are a way we train as predators. So anyway, my strategy right now. This strategy is flawed in the sense that it depends on the foresight of knowing the Europeans are coming and what that means. That is not a thing that historical rulers had the luxury of. And so if they were able to resist Europe, as Central Africa did for a long time, and as Ethiopia did, basically except for a very brief stint of, like, gosh, when was Ethiopia liberated from the Italians? I don't know, about 8 to 10 years. I want to say 8 years, probably, of being colonized was all Ethiopia had. And being on the Horn of Africa, they escaped a lot of the ravages of slavery as a trade. Because the damage done to Africa by slavery wasn't just that people were enslaved, but there was a backward effect of how that affected the whole of society. The fact that one of the most profitable things a young man could do would be to beat up other young people and sell them off to the Europeans. Which I'm sure a lot of philosophers and artists could have a good time comparing to some aspects of modern day culture, but I am definitely not qualified to do that. I must remind myself and you of that at all times. That this has developed in me because I have this foresight that nobody could possibly have had. I have been able to escape some of the ravages so far that I should have begun to undergone. Congo isn't as much, but it's different right now. The history is different right now because there are fewer states around here and fewer states around here. I think. I can't say for sure, but I believe it was a lot. I mean, are they still... They're probably not even a tribal monarchy anymore, are they? They're a proper monarchy. Oh, no, they were always a proper monarchy. Like, the tribal monarchies are here, and these are actual, well-established monarchies that have been around forever. Like, wait, that's not your dynasty. Sani is your dynasty, really? Okay, that's good to know. If I ever hear about the Sani dynasty, I'll know exactly who they're talking about now. That's why this game's great. That's why I love it. That's what's so great about it. It teaches me history, because these Swedish people making the game do the research for me. Anyway, I'm sorry I keep getting distracted. The strategy I'm using, and this is a game, but it is a strategy I'm using, and were it followed historically, I can't say what would happen, because the best example we have of this strategy in the area is Ethiopia, which is not quite in the same area. Or another analogous country would be Japan, to some extent, though I have already made some very different decisions from Japan that, were I Japan, I wouldn't have made, because it makes a lot more sense for Japan than it does for me. So you'll note that I converted to Christianity. This is a sign of a way... This is part of the strategy. The original strategy was this. I was a little kingdom over here. I had 2 provinces. I was surrounded by a whole bunch of other little kingdoms that had 1 or 2 provinces. I noted that this country I was, Bunyoro, was slightly stronger than the other countries in the area because they had 2 provinces. They were one of the only ones that did. And the other good choice would have been Uganda with the trade node, and I guess Rwanda turned out to do really well in this game. So historically, these little tribes existed for a very long time, and historically over here, little tribes would have existed for a long time as well. There was a move towards unification, I'm sure. I don't know the history well enough, but what I remember of in summation is that there were a bunch of small kingdoms here that warred with each other to capture their other populations of slaves, to sell to the Europeans, and that was how it went for about 200 to 300 years, until the Europeans decided to abolish the slave trade for economic reasons. I need to emphasize that economic reasons ended the slave trade, not just people doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. It was no longer as economically viable as paying people wages in the European colonies. It made more sense to have a better educated, more well-paid workforce that had better personal conditions than it was to enslave that population and force them to do labor. Which is really good, but incredibly amoral. Because when you look at history as a whole, history is an amoral process. What I am doing is evil by modern day standards, because we have learned, and the reason why it is because we have learned over many centuries that this way of doing things has very bad long-term consequences. That going around conquering people, enslaving people, and doing things like that is economically worse than doing the opposite. And that is the thing I really wish the leaders of the United States understood, and the people of the world all understood, that one way or another, economically, it's less viable. That's why I'm gonna say it. That's why I feel that more socialist and communistic form of governments will win, is because I believe they are more economically viable forms of government because they are more economically efficient. They are more, their citizens are more ethically treated, even if they're not treated well. They are more ethically treated. They are more ethically treated. It's a sliding scale, unfortunately. And that they tend to live longer, happier, healthy lives than countries in similar situations that don't do those things. That is the story of China. That was actually the story of that actually is and continues to be the story of Russia. And it'll be the story of any other country that does well in the area, that follows any of the newer models of government that have been coming out lately. That people have been talking about in academic circles, not just political circles and ideological circles. We tried a lot of things. History did. History is a story of what didn't work and what did. And ultimately, the most economically efficient forms of social organization always win. No, it's not quite that. The ones that are most efficient tend to win out in the long run, but in the short run, the ones with the most access to material resources, multiplied by efficiency, tends to win out. That is kind of the idea around like books like Gun, Germs, and Steel and other materialistic views of history, including Marx's views of history, but also anyone who follows a materialistic view of history, that resources drive history, which is kind of becoming a historical consensus, I feel. That is resources, not great men, that drive history. That is movements of masses, not movements of individuals. And that the story of history is a very complicated one that cannot be easily explained in terms of God, the will of God, or the will of history, or the will of the market, or anything quite so simple as that. Which is why this game is such a fucking complicated game.
If you insist.
Thanks, Siri. Yes, I am ranting. Thanks, Siri. Anyway, that's my opinion. And I emphasize it is an opinion. My strategy thus far is thus. I realized that I was in a region that was kind of territorially isolated, kind of isolated from this area and this area. There was a lot of unsettled land between us. There's an unsettled province right here that was basically that between that and the river is how we got cut off from Congo. That could kind of grow independent of the rest of the world. Because the problem I foresee, because I know how history is going to progress, and because I have the luxury of choosing who I'm going to play, what I foresaw is... No, stop it. I said history. History. Phone? Cut it out. Anyway. I know this is a really long, basically a lecture at this point. I've been going for like 30 minutes. Anyway, my strategy with the Kingdom of Miro looks like this. And I'm sorry I keep getting distracted. I am ADHD and my meds are woo! So, I saw I was diplomatically isolated. I was also next to a lot of uncolonized land that I could peacefully settle. I didn't need military superiority to settle it. I just needed colonists and enough of the military to protect the colonies from the indigenous population who may disagree with my policies, for a variety of reasons, most of which would probably be quite legitimate, but some of which would, history is more complicated than that. Some of these people might actually welcome me. That is more like what historically happened. Some of them may grow to regret it, and some may never regret it. We know about Cossacks. They didn't regret it until, later. I don't think they even regretted it then, because they had a reputation. So basically, I figured I needed to unify this area as quickly as possible, which meant doing a lot of unsavory things, like backstabbing, wheeling and dealing, making alliances, using them for one war, instantly breaking them for no reason, and then attacking the person I used to be allied with for no reason, for a made-up, fabricated reason, a reason I invented. like as a pretext for war in order to take their land, more land than what I originally had claimed, and then turn them into a vassal, and then peacefully annex them now that they were under my control and didn't really have a say in the matter. You know, which is a better way than slaughtering the whole family. I'd far rather just like marry in, then vassalize them, then change the rules on them and force them to put one of my people on the throne, or, you know, just strong arm somebody into accepting a marriage or something, you know, and then, or one of my allies or something, and basically, or adopting somebody, who knows, and then ending up, like, unifying my culture group into a single nation. Which I have to add, by the way, Paradox, as I've said before, and I will continue to push, though I'm sure there's more research you need to do, especially because we do not want to offend His Majesty, if we can do so. If we can, Iguru the First, if we can do so. That we have some kind of decision to reform the Katara Empire, which you keep talking about and clearly understand. I'm actually kind of thinking they're planning to do an Africa DLC. I really hope they do that. I hope they actually do flesh out the slave trade quite a bit so that its ruinous effects are fully felt in all regions of play. I also kind of hope they... You know, I also kind of hope they add a DLC that allows you to change what a province produces based on its climate, because a lot of chocolate nowadays is grown in Africa, even though it's native to South America. And that should be a thing that I could do with my empire, is turn some of these grains, you know, these, what grain would it be? Millet, probably? Millet, or there was one native to Africa that's like an ancient grain thing, but it's probably millet. So millet, you know, these provinces I have farming millet, whereas trades goods, to, like, you know, farming cash crops if I want, and, you know, maybe expand the meaning of resources so that specific ones have specific effects. Like, if I have more livestock, it should up production. If I have more salt, it should increase population growth. I'd also love to see population growth return. I like development, but I'd love to see population, you know, tax and population also be affected by, like, a general sense of the population density of a province. Like, this is a very heavily populated province, so it produces more income for you just naturally, and produces more trade power and stuff like that. And manpower, because there's just... people have just been reproducing over the generations. You have province value, possible number of buildings, livestock, only merchant republic, and build a trading post, etc. So my plan, jeez, I keep getting distracted from that. My plan is this. I wanted to build this up as a secure base. I knew I'd be cut off from my neighbors, and then I was going to choose. I was going to see what the situation was, and I had another choice. I could go west or I could go east. I can go because I looked, as you remember at the beginning, I looked at the trade tree, and I noticed that our goods went two ways. Either they could go here, to Zanzibar, which pulls from two African provinces, and is very good if you're trying to build up internal trade and basically participate in the immense, you know, and very lucrative at this time Indian Ocean trade during, you know, the 16th century. You know, as people were, you know, the very trade that caused the Europeans to want to get to India in the first place with their own merchants. You know, because it made these places, like, look at Zanzibar over here, like 11 gold, or I could go west to the Ivory Coast, and if I went west to the Ivory Coast, I'd end up closer to the Europeans, which would give me better access to technology, access to more interesting politics, and also would put me in a favorable place for European trade coming from India and around the Cape of Good Hope. Because any of that trade going like this would pass through my provinces and I could take a cut. That it was my initial intent in the game. And you'll also notice some of these goods end up going to places like Brazil and other places, so it really would open up my ability to interfere in European politics and actually build an anti-colonial power. Because if I go east, I'm not going to encounter the Europeans until pretty late, and by that time, they will have already colonized half of Africa, I figured. I'd also be in a position where I'd have to engage in Indian Ocean politics with, like, the Horn of Africa, Gulf of Aden, India. I could have gotten straight to India and made sure here that with power at the Horn, I could make sure it went down to Zanzibar, and then take advantage of them really late in the game. But mostly, I'd have to do it of my own under my own power. More opportunities, but also more risks. I could go to West Africa, and that would be very bad for me. That would go poorly. Because I'm the first place the Europeans are going after. I will be technologically inferior to them because I am not very directly connected to European centers of progress, your technological progress, but I am close enough that I could slowly gain things and maybe focus more on matters of state rather than technology. I figured that this region, which is around Uganda, I don't know, I think, geez, I'm sure if I look at the province names, it'll actually tell me the names of real countries and remind me of who's in this area, because I don't actually know. I'm very bad at African geography because our school system is racist, and I never learned like exactly where is Zanzibar. I mean, Zanzibar's around here. Where is Central Africa? Where is various parts of Africa? I don't actually know the name of most of the countries around here. But I know one of the names of the countries around here, around the lake, because I've been playing Bunyoro and because I want to be respectful to history. I happen to know that we are in Uganda. And in my opinion, based on this simulation, that was the best place in Africa to try to build a very strong African power capable of fighting Europe. I would have my back to a wall for most of the game. Eventually, I do have to get involved with these politics, but I have time, and I can use that and time's on my side because they'll be too busy fighting and bickering amongst each other to really colonize the provinces. That was the problem. I also considered Madagascar. Madagascar has the potential to become the England, basically, of the England or Japan of Africa, but you're very isolated. There is nobody, nobody really significant near you. And if we look at the trade map mode, you are on the route, but you're in the Zanzibar node, which means you are going to have to get involved here on the continent, just like England does up in the Channel. And so you wouldn't actually, you'd have to play a game like England where you interfere in the continent occasionally, but you focus on building an overseas empire at the same time. Which would be difficult because you don't have nearly the same kind of resources that England or even Ireland does. Like, England, how many provinces? For example, Madagascar has quite a few provinces, actually. This would be a very fun game to play. They are the other group that I feel could have had the potential according to this simulation. You could build something here, but you would end up being like the France of Africa if you're here, or if you're Congo, and you're going to also end up really having to deal with Europeans from a fairly good start, so you need to be in a very advantageous strategic position, and this area has that potential, but like, you're basically going to be conflicting with powerful neighbors like Ethiopia the entire time. Ethiopia was another good pick. The problem is that you end up you start in a very tense situation between the Ottomans, the Mamluks, and yourself, and regional powers here in Arabia, with lots of big powers around that are gulping people up all the time. What the heck has happened over... Oh, wait. No, there's the Ottomans, right? Ottomans, they're probably going to destroy the Mamluks, and then it's you versus the Ottomans, and you better be on the good side, and you are literally, as you can see happen to Ethiopia here, you're literally the only power of your religion in the entire game, so you are alone. Like, around here, fetishism is very regional, so it's hard to make friends abroad, and it means that there's kind of a ticking time bomb over here of when these guys are going to try to convert you. Even if the European, and then you're going to end up with the Europeans coming from the other side, and that's where I've gotten. I felt that this country made the most sense. It was slightly more powerful than the others. I mean, it's the one that claims the name Katara. That's pretty significant, and I wonder how the other kings feel about that over here. The ones that we conquered in this game, instead of just kind of bickering with until Europe came in, and into Europe's dominance of the continent, probably. Not to be critical of your Majesty's ancestors. Though I suppose that's exactly what I'm doing. I felt that this was one of the best positioned countries, even though it was very small. This was a potential Italy. It could have an African Renaissance of sorts. One moment. Sorry, my partner's hanging out in the room with me. Wanted to alert me to some information. So I figured that this could become the Italy of Africa in a sense. It was kind of isolated. It wasn't as well positioned for trade as Italy. It starts out as part of the linchpin for Europe in, trade across the Silk Road, because the Silk Road's over here, right? Going through Samarkand and around or Persia and around down and all this other stuff. Pardon the ringtone. And Italy was that part of why Italy had its Renaissance, and I'm not quite as well positioned because, unfortunately, my trade node only goes out. But because I'm right here, that means that a lot of people are interested in what I'm doing, but aren't necessarily interested in taking me over. They just want a cut of my trade, right? Like, they could go upstream and push it down, so eventually these guys are going to come looking for me, as are the Europeans, because I am an endpoint node. And you want that, and I basically split trade in Africa between Congo and Zanzibar from my own node. So the more rich I get, the more influence I start to have in these areas. That's why these guys are my rival now, probably. But I realized that was a very good position to be in to start out. I'm far enough away from the Europeans that I have time. I'm close enough to the Europeans to benefit from, to be able to have choices about how to interact with them, which is what has happened. So I've been focusing on going west. I decided I was here, and I said, well, I kind of have a vassal here. I have a slight advantage. These guys are kind of scary. I could have interfered down here in Southeast Africa. Jeez. Yeah, that's the other problem with Madagascar, is you gotta deal with these guys. Like, it'd be one thing if you had, like, Europe, but your closest rival power major rival power is gonna be Ethiopia, and all these guys are gonna be ganging up on them. And, they might actually defend themselves for a really long time like they did historically, but they're gonna be real distracted for the entire game, for a good chunk of the game, with regional politics as waves of powerful Muslim nations pass through and threaten their northern border. That's one reason I didn't pick them. Despite, the Rastafarian implications of playing Ethiopia, since they worship the last king of Ethiopia as the second coming of Christ. Which, I mean, good pick, frankly. Anyway, Haile Selassie the First. So, anywho, yeah. Click here to move your main trading port to the prime ministry. It could be but the new node is richer. Yeah, the new node is richer, and you have the ability to generate more power there. The problem I have is power. That's why I haven't done it. This is still my main trade city, and it's going to be that way for a while. Eventually, it's going to be Luba. Here, who have an accepted culture, a culture that we're all comfortable with, that's local, and that's probably going to spread around this area rather than Ghanan culture. Well, I might move Ghana into one province and then let it kind of branch out, just make a little, like, settler colony here. Anyway, I'm doing something really terrible, basically, is I've decided the way to play this game is to play it the same way the Europeans are doing, in a way. In a slightly different way, but in a way. For one thing, I'm surrounded by a lot of colonizable provinces. Once I picked this area and said this is the best region, I thought about it. Now, we're fetishists, but so are all our neighbors. So we actually have, in an area where we can easily unify our religion, which, if I had done so earlier, before if Congo hadn't turned Christian, I probably would have stayed fetishist. For now. I would probably be forced into a decision eventually that I hadn't anticipated. Because history is not that predictable. I am not an expert in predicting it, nor am I an expert in this game. But I figured I would have time before I'd have to deal with these people. They'd be very distracted by Ethiopia for a very long time. To try to destroy it. And that I could probably take this over and then kind of use my geographical isolation due to the northern Congo Basin, and the uncolonized, the Kalahari desert, basically. That I could use my advantageous position between them that cuts off a lot of the actual serious settlement to head west and abuse the conflicts between these nations to slowly take over the entire region and make it, and basically form a Central African empire of sorts that combined basically Uganda and Congo into one singular region. It would be difficult. It would start looking like Austria-Hungary after a while because a smaller culture group conquered a larger culture group. But because of all this uncolonized lands and stuff, I actually could become a strong colonial power. I could do a little bit of Russia, I could do a little bit of what Russia does. I could do a little bit of what Italy or Sweden really does, like the Scandinavian countries do. I've played games as them before, and I could do a little bit of what the Europeans do. And between that, I could try to reach the Ivory Coast before the Europeans took it for themselves. That is the key. I need to be in the Ivory Coast. I don't need to own the Ivory Coast. It doesn't need to be my main trade node, though I'd love to make it my main trade node initially. But I need to beat these guys to taking over Congo. Either that or I had to move east. And if they beat me to it now, which is possible, because Spain has a thriving little colony here in the Ivory Coast with 3 provinces that is probably going to start expanding south, which means we're going to have to colonize northward once we take over this part of the Congolese coast. And geez, those are very aggressive. Those are very, well, they're not very ferocious. They're incredibly aggressive. 7% chance, 4% chance of very much. That's not too bad. But there's a lot of them. But it also means that if we don't murder them all, which we're not going to do because I am deciding not to do that for ethical reasons and also for very strategic ones, because there's a limit to how far I can go with this game, I'll be frank, into simulating actual history. But they are going to come colonizing this way. They will colonize faster than me, which means I need to take Congo as quickly as possible if I'm going to commit to going west. Otherwise, me and Spain are going to end up in conflict. They might have the coast and me the inlet. That is very possible right now. That would be okay, but then I would definitely have to start crusading east. Which leads me to why I converted the entire country to Christianity, even most of the country doesn't follow that religion. Well, I'm going to need to actually add a different map mode here than what? Diplomatic? Excuse me. Diplomatic's too useful. Terrain is necessary. Dynastic? No, I want dynastic. It's also just fun to look at. No, I'll just have to, because this might go for a while. Most of the country is fetishist. Most of the sounding terrain is fetishist. Our largest and most aggressive neighbor is Sunni and controls a lot of territory, which is all Sunni. I have one Sunni province, which they may want to liberate if they are sufficiently fanatical in their Sunniism. My northern neighbors are Sunni. The only other people who are Christian are the people I am currently destroying as a nation. And these guys, who I'm trying to make friends with, and who I'm basically becoming friends with to further destroy Congo and also to offload some of my overextension into their nation. Though I'm probably going to have to conquer them. I'm going to have to conquer all of them, but I have to conquer Congo. These ones can hang around for a while. I'd love to diplo-annex them instead of actually having to waste resources conquering them. I'd love it to be peaceful so that we can all just peacefully unite as much as possible. Unite. Oh god, Portugal's coming south too. Who's here? Please tell me. Is that a colony? I can't see it, so I don't know, but that is probably another European colony. These people are coming. They are going to start colonizing the Ivory Coast. They are going to be technologically advantaged over me. They are going to be in a very good position to just take all this trade that I've been storing over here and siphon it over here, which means I am going to have to pivot east at some point. But if I can get a foothold in here and maybe just luckily take a slice of the coast, then I can maybe parlay one of these European colonies that's forming and play them off against each other. Like, there's Portugal, there's... Oh my goodness, Portugal's gonna lose this. Portugal has a massive colony. Who's over here? That's an actual indigenous nation. But here we have, like, Jungle of Guinea, and then there's Portugal losing its colony to Songhai. Way to go, Songhai. I'm actually thinking that all this technological development I've been doing has been very much strengthening all of Africa, which is making the Europeans' job a lot harder. Like, look at this. Morocco has a chunk of Portugal. Like, well, Spain has a chunk of Morocco, but that's pretty normal. But Portugal having a chunk of Spain? Like, what's going over here? Morocco is forming a colony and going west along with the Europeans. Some of this happening is probably a result of the fact that I have been spreading institutions like wildfire around here. Like, didn't I just develop global trade? Oh, I'm in the process of it, aren't I? Yeah. So, I'm probably developing Luba, and I'm keeping their culture because it's Congolese. It might be easier to convert some people over. But I really, 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 really want to convert the province first is the problem. Because the longer I wait, the harder it gets, and then I'm going to have a lot of religious disunity in my provinces, and we can't deal with that. That being said, like, we have almost everything the Europeans have. Like, the Europeans are about as good at global trade as the rest of us. This institution is one of the rare ones where the whole world has about the same chance of developing it, and the only people who don't seem to have it are Songhai, who really only have feudalism. But, you know, technology's been spreading throughout Africa pretty thoroughly, and Africa's doing a lot better than it usually does in games. Granted, I rarely get this far playing a nation that has any involvement in Africa, and without having taken all of Africa myself as a European country. The point is, I know how the Europeans think about this, and I know because I've played them, and I understand the position that they're in. I understand that Spain, I wonder who Spain's rival is. I'm sure they have one. Enemies: France, England, Ottomans, Russia, Morocco. Very powerful countries, right? Rivals: England, France, the Ottomans. Very powerful countries, some of them on their borders. They need to get territory. These places are very easy to get territory in because the people over here don't have the benefits of the technology yet and are more sparsely populated and less developed. You know, the Europeans had the Renaissance and the Crusades and access to a ton of iron and stuff like that. Like, if you look at trade goods, I'm sure we can see iron, and I'd love to see also, perhaps in the African thing, iron become a more interesting resource, if they're not already a more interesting resource. But you should be able to see what trade goods are produced where. See, iron. We got a lot of iron, guns, germs, and steel. Steel is going to become the strength of our empire. For now, though, we are very much beginning to profit off of the slave trade, which very much plagues this part of the coast. Also plagues this part of the coast very heavily as well. assimilated natives give you extra slaves. But extra slaves should increase the population of provinces they're next to, and they may even do that. Influenza. People are sick here. The flu's going around, so there's fewer slaves. They're dying of flu. Jeez, this game is crazy. Game is crazy. It's almost like these guys have a sacred mission. Like, I gave away a province to produce spices, but I have my own spice-producing provinces. And these guys are very friendly to me, and they're giving me trade power, but look at all the slavery. Like, this country over here, Kasanje makes almost all its money off of slavery and ivory, which are all incredibly valuable. And also very harmful in the long run. Because what happens when you kill all the elephants? Well, there's no more ivory. You gotta produce it sustainably, and they don't produce it sustainably, they produce it to meet demand. But if they do, then they have more money for more time if they can domesticate elephants, and elephants are pretty domesticated, and then you just wait for them to die and take their tusks. Except they live for fucking ever. I don't know, sell elephant meat. Bet they do. Ivory poachers, I'm sure they sell every part of the elements. Ooh, and there's gold. Now look at that gold. Or no, copper. This is copper. These guys have gold. These guys are rich and probably plagued with inflation because of all these goods. Linen, silk, valuable goods that are not people. And we want a cut of it because the one problem with the provinces is we produce boring things, the same kind of boring things. Even more boring things, like as boring as Sweden, right? Sweden but instead of furs, we have like livestock and tropical wood. And occasional access to ivory. We're a boring nation of farmers. What can a nation of farmers offer to the world? Well, conquering all of Africa. And so what we're doing is we're conquering this area to build it as a bulwark against the Europeans. I chose to convert to Christianity. Why? I have two choices in this game of what I can do. I am split directly between the East and West. There's Byzantium. I am at the same longitude as Byzantium. That is where East and West meet. This is Europe. This is Asia. This is me in the middle of Africa. So I'm going to have to choose a side at some point. I can choose the West and join up with Ethiopia over here. I'm sure they like me for turning Christian, right? Like, yay, you're not quite Christian, but you're heretics, we tolerate you, and you're the enemy of my enemy, which is Kilwa, who they don't like because they're not. I mean, these guys hate me a lot because we're a different religion, we're a rival, we have hostile relations, they're allied with some really people. These guys could go to war at me at any time if they weren't so busy fighting a war against Ethiopia and Darfur. But, we have some time, because they're probably, like, I'm making the first connection here with them. I'm gonna have to fight a lot in the East, and that means I need the West secure. I either need to be friends with the people over here and lean on them to take care of the Europeans, which I doubt that they can do, just because they're in a bad position and they don't have the future vision that I have to know what's gonna happen, because they're just AI nations. And focus on the East and get as close to India as possible myself. And then when the Europeans come here, they're going to have to deal with me in order to get to trade, going around the Horn. Or I had to go west, try to get involved with the Europeans, and then take advantage of their infighting in order to take their colonies. I'm focusing on the West. If I pick Christianity, it'll put me into very nasty conflicts with these guys. I'll be a friend of their enemy. Congo, which is Christian, will be easier to integrate into my country. I may have to deal with a lot of religious unrest, and these guys hate my guts, and they're very powerful. But I have friends now. I have friends in Europe, because the most powerful countries in the world right now, oh my god, Burgundy is huge. The most powerful countries in the world right now, Bohemia, what are the great powers right now even? Spain, Russia, France, England, and Burgundy. These are, geez, I'm actually starting to catch up with them. Development costs versus technology costs. The Ottomans are way ahead. They're so powerful. you know, playing as the Ottomans is easy in this game. If you really want to beat the West in this game, play the Ottomans and don't let the Empire just fall apart. But Russia's doing incredibly well too, and promptly spreading east as they did during this century. They had their own Wild West, and this is that time. Ming is still quite powerful, but they've been falling behind, I think. Ming starts out really good, but then they're hampered by bureaucracy and don't get very far. Timurids are still around, which is surprising. Usually they did turn into... I mean, Persia's here, but the fact that they're still around is kind of... and so powerful is kind of amazing. They're another good one to play, and possibly the thing I play next, because they're a nation in a very interesting area that basically just went through an Alexander the Great phase, but now is losing it to the Alexander the Great phase of the Ottomans, where they just conquered a bunch of people. I'm having my own Alexander the Great phase, a series of kings who are intent on conquering their neighbors for reasons unknown, but really because some mystic told them long ago that their family was going to defeat white invaders from the outside or something. You know, they got some divine voice of God in their head that told them the future, that actually told them the future, and now they are preparing for war with the Europeans like they were Stalin in the 1930s. And I mean that also in terms of the amount of atrocities I am committing in order to get there, and also the fact that our technology rate is going far ahead and probably life expectancy is going on, and our provinces are prosperous and have no devastation at all. Oh boy. Now there's a historical allegory. So, finally, that was a literal hour-long history lecture about how I am strategizing in this game. But I felt I needed to do it before I continue, because the things I'm doing look really bad, and I am worried about looking bad myself, and I also want to do justice to the history. I said I would do so at the beginning of the video, and I intend to. So we really bit off more than we can chew over here, especially because we had to rush reforming the government. Yeah, these dispute successions are all in Europe. We don't care about it. Papacy, we have a little bit of papal influence. So the reason I converted is, one, I get into this. You'll notice Spain and Portugal, they really like the Pope. One of the atrocities I kind of failed to mention in this game is that we passed a whole bunch of decisions. Oh my god, we have even more. Act of Uniformity. No, we chose that because we don't want to embrace institutions. We're not abolishing under the Indulgences Act. That would be great for suspend all penal laws for members of other religions than the established church and grant them the freedom of public worship and right to advancement to military and civil officers. Interesting. That would make me popular with Ethiopia and probably, what's the downside again? Stability cost goes up. It's more expensive to be stable because we have to stabilize more people than just the Catholics. Conventicle Act, missionary strength, less tolerance of heretics. Maybe. Advancement of religion, missionary strength up, institutions spread down. No way we're doing that. We do not. We need to make friends. We need to make friends with every Christian as much as possible. In fact, if we became a free haven for Protestants, they might even start emigrating to us if we could get technologically further ahead, if that's simulated in this game. Like them going, oh, we're going to Africa for religious freedom, and have a bunch of white people come here, but on our terms, and then start adding to our technological might. We have a deficit, a very bad one. Why is it so high? Because of corruption, because of the really terrible stability costs, because nobody wants to pay taxes, because half the country's up in arms, because we've really fucked everything up for everyone completely. So we're gonna have to fire this guy. Yep. So we're losing money, or we were, very slowly. What just happened now? Oh my god, we should not have fired that guy at all. Oh my god, everything is about to go really terrible in our country. Oh boy. Okay, so we need a loan. We need to go, I'm sorry, bro. Or we could just debase the currency at this point. Yeah. We'll just increase corruption in the country and have to fight it for a while in order to get money now. It's basically not that much different than a loan. And then we need to hire the guy we just fired because he was giving us a lot of money. Alright, let's see what happens. It may have been a bad decision again. Well, marriage. This would bring out the inferior, due to their inferior prestige and legitimacy, having 3 royal marriages will have the yearly effects, improve relationships, chance of new heir. I was actually thinking of marrying the Spanish. Could I do that? Would they accept? We're really far away. No, they won't. Okay. Okay. That hurts our legitimacy, but our legitimacy is, at least our legitimacy is high. Everybody just hates us. So, they're like, yeah, that guy's definitely the king, but screw that guy. So, yes, we will accept. What they don't tell you is that it could also result in a secession war at some point, if you're not careful. If you royal marry too much, but I mean, it'll make the game more interesting for you, and it'll make it more interesting for me, so no reason not to. Well. Yes. Make them really like us. So we're going to suck up to the Europeans. We need to choose Spain or Portugal probably in this conflict. What are their religions? Metropolitan? Fascinating. Yellow states have a metropolitan, green states can be assigned one, red states cannot. Alright, it's fascinating. Oh, there's Brazil. How are we doing in Brazil? I didn't know we could see it. Castilian Brazil. Native tribe. Portuguese Colombia, French Colombia, English Brazil. Yeah, they're already over there. I didn't think there was any way we were going to beat them there, but the thing is, Africa's a lot harder to colonize. They're going much more slowly, and that makes sense. And the hope is that they'll be so focused over here that we can kind of fool around. So, Spain is weaker than Portugal, but Portugal's being attacked by Shanghai, but, Spain is stronger than Portugal locally, so if they go to war, they'll be really busy up here, but they'll win. So Spain are the people whose good graces we want to court, ultimately. And at some point, we're going to need extra diplomatic relation. Ooh, we can have a 4th one now. We want an extra diplomatic relation with either Ethiopia, if they will royal marry us. Negative neutral attitude. Or Spain, or Portugal. And if we can have some of our descendants marrying into the, what dynasty? Into the de Bourgeon and Branca dynasties, then that'll put us in a good place for actually resisting them diplomatically. You see, I know I can't beat the Europeans in a war right now. They are technologically more advanced. So if you can't beat them, join them. I want their technology. I want to benefit from it. I have trade that they want. If I develop my trade node, it increases value trade without them having to pay anything at all. They can just let me do it, which is good for them. Because they get a chunk of that trade. As long as they keep getting a chunk of that trade, they'll probably be happy to leave me alone, I figure. They are far enough away, they're concerned with other powers, like Shanghai over here, that are putting up a very stiff resistance to colonization to my north. And I can take advantage of that situation to, basically, by becoming Catholic, I can take advantage of that situation to join the rising European community, the rising Western community, to become a Western nation, basically, a Western nation that is African. So, an African Western nation. Kind of like what Japan did in Asia when the U.S. started and other European powers started getting involved. They invited them in, they did trade. The Europeans didn't really care about their islands that much because they mostly just had fish and steel and other simple things, maybe some coal. Didn't really have anything too valuable for them, except the fact that they were on an island. They were far away from the mainland. That's also a strategy you could do with these guys as well, except they have much more valuable provinces that are going to be much tastier to a lot more people, I believe. Yeah, or, jeez, they do a lot of slavery. Look at all that slavery! Okay, so you basically sell off your own people for ages in order to make good, but eventually you could become, hey Europeans, I'm your friend. You want to attack Kilwell? Well, I'm your baby. And of course, if you're Kilwell, you're going to have to stop them from doing that yourself, as well as dealing with Ethiopia and any possible rising threat in Central Africa. This is why it was difficult for Africa to resist. It was too chaotic. They weren't unified. There wasn't one big country like there was here in the Middle East to stall the fall. Eventually, it might have fallen like the Ottomans, though the Ottomans kind of fell on their own sword a bit because of some bad rulership, and bad and corrupt rulership, and because of the rise of Russia, more than it was because of the actions of the Europeans. You know, and in that way, you can just stall them for long enough as a unified India, or a less fractured China, or as a unified Central Africa. You might be able to build kind of a little bit of stability in the changing world where you can actually ride along the wave, and eventually when these communities unite, as the Europeans go around and start interacting with everyone, as the communities all kind of start to become one big global community, you can be in a good position to then be one of the leading powers in that global community. Because that is what is eventually going to happen. There's no way to stop it. The people here want to get over here. You can't just stop them from moving. Not unless you actually just build a wall or kill everyone crossing your lands. You can't stop them from getting here. And even if you were doing that, somebody else isn't going to want to because they want their money, right? Even if it is to sell their own people for cash, right? So you can't stop them from getting here. You can't stop them from spreading their ideas, spreading their religion, spreading their attitudes, destroying your culture to some extent. You can't. But you can compromise with it, like Japan did, and try to do that thing, but in your own way. Control the way it goes. So that's what I'm doing as Banyoro. I am doing the kind of backstabby Game of Thrones thing that are just quintessential European politics. You know, killing my own relatives in a war that was that I completely fabricated myself. Raiding terrain, you know, selling Condorati. These are all things that these powers did, especially in Italy during the Renaissance and stuff like that. It's not any different. If you heard about it today, you'd say, oh, how horrid. They do horrid things. It's not that different from what Europe used to do not so long ago. And give people some, like, space to screw up. Even if it does mean the deaths of millions. Because Europe did that. Europe killed millions and millions and millions of people. And it was a mistake. And Europe knows that and doesn't want to admit it. But that's the truth. And every other country in the world, maybe that's a very unfortunate part of history, is that to learn not to do that, sometimes things happen. And so people will be really critical of very progressive, reformative, and popular rulers who kind of engage in more old ways of politicking that Europe, in theory, advanced beyond, but which we have now proven we definitely have not advanced beyond with the election of Donald Trump. We are not past that. I cannot sit here with superiority and say the United States is a better country than the country I'm playing right now, because it's not true. There are certain nice things about living in the U.S. where people wouldn't want to come here, because people from Africa do still come here to escape things. because there are some ways in which it's nice here, but that's just because the money's here. The money were here, it'd be them, and we'd all be moving there to get the money so that we can eat. So, I am doing horrible things in this game, but they are horrible things that the Europeans, when I say that, keep in mind the Europeans can and did do far worse in the same period of time. Especially when we're talking about the Congo, the site of the Belgian Congo, the site of the genocide of Congo that we are conquering. We're not going to be we're not going to be working these people to death quite so much. I mean, well, we will. Actually, we literally will. But not as much as they aren't, but no more than what they're doing to themselves. Well, more. We're going to develop this trade until we abolish it. When we abolish it, we'll get other just as valuable goods, frankly. We don't want it. But we can't get rid of it. We literally do not have the option to get rid of it right now. It's not even a decision we can pass. I love it to be, but it is not. It might be someday, but it isn't right now. And when it is, I will definitely pass it immediately. Because I also have the benefit of because once again, I have the benefit of hindsight. Jeez, coffee? I wonder if they can change what the province produces if they got coffee over there. Coffee is not African indigenously. It's from over here, I believe. It's from Indonesia. It was a big secret the Europeans really wanted. They really wanted their friggin' coffee. And turmeric and things like that. And that is why they did it all. It was all for a cup of spice and some gold. Okay, I'm pretty sure state maintenance needs to go down. We lose prestige. We do not need more unrest. Religious civil disorder were among the possible options, but they went, we should strive for a tolerant society as their choice of action. We're going to start hearing a lot about European politics now because we're so involved in it. Because we turned into what we are. It's going to, the Age of Reformation is going to, what are we doing? What do we need to do? We need to fire that advisor again, even though we just hired him, because I really would like to know how much money he literally produces. Is there a way for me to do that? Like, does it say... It should... I wish I could see... Isn't there, like, a ledger or something I can look at? Like, I'd love to actually see a full ledger of what is causing production to go up. Yeah, so 10% of that is from the guy. That is less than 1. That is less than the amount we're paying him. Yeah, he's gone. Even though I need that extra monarch points. Thankfully, our monarch's actually quite a competent administrator. This is definitely the man to do this. Nayumakuma. He's greedy, though. I wish he wasn't so greedy. But there you go. Stability is low. And we're heading for a major disaster if we do not raise stability soon. We've been informed that diplomatic Congo has been discovered building a spy network. So we've got overextension down. Thank goodness we boosted it. We need to avert this disaster. We could have a civil war. We could stability costs. Jeez. Unrest. Progress is 2 each month. Religious unity. Jeez. We have only a few years to deal with it. The nobility of state modifier. Robert Barron's chastise has expired. Their influences now. Yeah, we chastise some robber barons. Alright. Flow to Portugal. New Papist. Well, we hired him, then we fired him, then we hired him again, then we fired him. That's that little human element of history there, is people making bad decisions. Because they were intoxicated. Accurate. Hashtag accurate. We could mothball forts. Can't do the army. State maintenance. It's got to be state maintenance. I need to reduce our state maintenance, or we're going to have to debase the currency again. So, how powerful are they? Jesus fucking Christ. Where? In our home territory? Things have gotten bad in this country. Real bad. We may have to lose this colony. They're really unhappy probably that we're debasing the currency. We're really unstable. Can we handle them? Harsh treatment for sure. Ooh. We're just gonna have to round up the leaders because we cannot handle that. We're just gonna have to keep suppressing that rebellion because we could lose that one. Our country could break. We cannot accept the demands of the pagan. The other thing is being pagan is a bad idea because the Europeans, I believe, can just kind of seize territories if you're pagan. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore in this game, but that's how it used to be. They're like, you're pagan, you're not a real religion, we can just take your territory, we don't gotta respect you. So this whole area is now in regional chaos. I really want to sell them. When they have the money, I really want to sell them another province. Build spy network. You know what? Don't worry about it. We have plenty of... Let's fabricate another claim. And then... Okay, and then stop building the spy network. They know we're there. They know what we're doing. None of our nearby places have a disputed secession. We cannot dispute the secession. Lots of free advisor slots, but no money for advisors. We need a boost. Oh, come on. Just a little while longer. We can get stability up to 1. Stop the disaster from happening. Yes. That should increase religious unity. Our prestige went up. Converting province is a good way to just gain papal influence. What can we do with that? Not a lot right now. Bless our ruler. Ooh, I'd love to have you beautify a saint. I really want an African saint. Come on. That would be real good for me. That would let me be stable. I embrace the Counter-Reformation. I said, fuck those Protestants. Like, come on. You can convert provinces to Catholic. I definitely should. Lega. I really want to do Luba, don't I? Yeah. Jeez, it's a decent amount of unity, too. Yeah. So we did a Blasphemy Act. We made blasphemy illegal. The Hereto Comburendo Act. Yeah. Fuck heretics. The Animists are really... The Animists were already kind of going towards Christianity as it was. You know, they're already kind of they're already kind of creating this African Christianity that we're going to take advantage of to create our own version of it. Oh no, they rose up. We beat them because they're not so good as us. Oh my god. Oh, that's... Oh, good for you, Ethiopia. Good for you. Please do that. If you do that, I'll be quite happy. We do not want to do the money thing. We have a loan we got to pay off. I do not want more corruption. Unbalanced research, we gotta solve that. Which means we need administrative technology that we can't afford right now. Jeez, we're in a bad place right now. We're in a real dilemma here. But, I mean, this is a growing pains thing that we had to do. Truce is about to expire. 3 years. Do you think a war would help or make it worse? I think a war would probably make it worse. But, this is a really opportune time to seize more of Congo. So, I think we're just going to do the war and say screw it. And accept the overextension and stuff like that and just let the country descend into chaos for a while. Yep, Luba's real high. We'll also get more Christian provinces that way, won't we? Maybe increase our religious unity a bit. Yeah, look at all these Christian provinces. Look at all these Catholic provinces that we want. We want those Catholic provinces. Those will be a lot easier to integrate. Culture is Congolese. Culture map mode. These are all Congo Yaka, Congo Congolese, Congo Luba, which is accepted. and will probably need to continue being accepted because they're probably going to get a lot of influence once I up their little trade city here. It's the capital of Congo. The Luba here is where the trade goes through. It has an inland center of trade. Makes it cheaper to develop, faster for institutions to spread. We are developing Luba to get global trade. This was the exact right time, and that's why we're converting them. We need to wait for that to happen before we improve their province anyway. And it'll already help, because we do not want a really powerful fetishist province right now. We need unity. We need to actually be in control of things. And that's right, the colonies are all fetishists too. Whoo! These guys, fetishist zealots, they want to convert Buonero. Hey! Let's boost stability. If we can do that, then let's handle them. Let's beat the heck out of them. So we're just going to go and, execute a few of the leaders. Jeez, look at all these rebel factions. This country's just going to descend into chaos pretty soon. The fetishists are the most unhappy too. Growth of the perfume industry, a growing merchant class, as well as increasingly demanding social code among the nobility and upper classes, led to increased demand for perfume. The halls of grand palaces are now expected to have a likable scent as well as a majestic decor. This has led to a surge in demand for products such as frankincense, myrrh, and other scented products for the making of perfume. And in Novara, the refinement of local flowers and foreign scented goods have even grown into a major industry in of itself. Good for Milan. I mean, Milan's just kind of doing its thing in trading. They're not really interested in conquering people right now that much who aren't Italian. And, folks, I'm going to be right back. I need to get some more water. My mouth's getting kind of dry from all this talking. So I'm sorry. I guess this has been Hyena Girl 64. You've been watching High Strategy with me. I'm gonna go get some water. I'm gonna refresh myself a little bit, and then I'll be back and I'll do the next episode. There'll be less talking this time and a lot more fighting, but I hope you agree with me that it's worthwhile for me to talk about these things with you in playing a game like this. So anyway, see you later, folks.